One bracket trick fixes 90% of the distribution conditional type problems. Here's the secret. We'll first understand an array utility type that should preserve union types in a single entity rather than distributing them. So before that, we'll first understand the last higher order type that we saw, initiating distributed conditional types. And in this generic, when we used to pass in any union like this, string and number, we were basically getting the string and number individually processed and union together at the end. We don't want this behavior because we want this particular union to be treated as a single entity. So there's a very easy solution for this. We make another higher order type, and the difference that we do here is we wrap both the types in square brackets. This is a pattern that we follow, wrapping the generic and the type that we want to extend to in square brackets. This pattern basically disables distribution logic. What happens then is when we pass in a union type here, we would basically have this union returned as a single entity and processed as a single entity. And what we get returned is this union typed in as an array. Let's take one more example of this. We have the same pattern that followed here. The types have been wrapped in these square brackets, and we have this info property being used here. So we take this type u and then we want it to infer whatever the pattern returns. So you don't have to take much consideration of what infer is right now. All you have to understand is this particular conditional pattern with extends. In here, what would happen is you would infer the type of whatever this generic is. So if we pass in string here, and the generic would be a string, you would try to infer itself as a string, but it can only infer a single property. So if we want to identify if a type is a union or not, when we pass in a string, we are returning, if that is true, we return false. So that is not a union, of course. But when we pass in a union, that cannot be inferred inside a single type. This is why it returns false, and then we have true there. So if there is a union, we would return true. This way we can identify unions. So now you know the fix. But when is distribution actually good? We have some mind-boggling examples coming.